Join us in a festival that promises to be extraordinary, because Bali is extraordinary.
Greeting everyone. We hope you are enjoying the 2021 Ubud Writers and Readers Festival. Thank you for joining us for today's book launch of Southpaw by Dennis Sweeney. The moderator for this session is Kim Wingrad. During the book launch, please keep your mobile phone on silent and do not use flash photography. For the most up-to-date program information, please refer to the program changes page on ubudwritersfestival.com. To enter our venues, please install the Peduli Lindungi application and bring your first vaccination card. Please follow our health protocol throughout the event by wearing your mask at all times, washing your hands regularly, and physically distancing from the crowd. Please join the conversations on social media. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Ubud Writers Fest, and always use the hashtag UWRF21. And let's enjoy, and thank you very much.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Ubud Readers and Writers Festival, or Writers and Readers Festival as it's called. How many of you have been to any of the sessions so far? Yeah, you've been to a lot of them. This year the festival returns with the theme Mulat Sarira, self-reflection, which is drawn from a Balinese Hindu philosophy. We have been exploring the meaning of self-reflection, cultural introspection, and human rights, examining who we are, what unites and divides us, and what drives our actions. And actually that is a lot of what today is about, and today's book is about, Southpaw. It really is about self-reflection. One could even say a little bit about self-deflection, but we'll come back to that. And it certainly is about examining who we are. So welcome, Dennis.
Yes, thank you, Kim. Thanks for having me.
Southpaw is the name of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the pleasure of reading it about a week ago and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I put it down and I said to Dennis, well, it's a bit like Shantaram, but without the heroism. And eat, pray, love, without any food, absolutely no praying, and whatever love is there is tough love. That was kind of a very quick summary. Now, Dennis, you first wrote this book actually back in 2008, and here we are in 2021 at a book launch.
Yeah.
So that in itself must be a bit of an interesting story as to how did we get to here?
Well, I mean, it's a long story, but I self-published in 2008, but then since then it's been through a couple of reincarnations. But yeah, I've rewritten quite a bit of it since 2008. You know, it's a different animal to what it was when I first wrote it.
Yeah. So Dennis is a boxer, hence the title Southpaw. He's a traveler. He's been on the skids a bit, I think. He's an actor, a comedian, a bodyguard, a sailor, and a whole lot more, including, at the risk of copping a left hook, a bit of a criminal. So it does beg the question, you know, how much of this book is in, how much of you is in this book?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that you should call me a criminal coming from Australia, you know. I mean, the last time I applied for a visa to go to Australia, they asked me if I had a criminal record, and I said I didn't realize it was still necessary.
Well, that was in the, as I said, there might be a bit of self-deflection here.
Yeah. Well, just a bit about myself. You know, I'm half Scottish and half Irish, so half of me wants to get drunk, the other half doesn't want to pay for it. I'll give you time to laugh between the jokes, Andy. Yeah.
And in the middle, you still want to punch people out?
No, I don't feel like that. I haven't been in a fight since I was at school, you know.
You did say that you tell me you come from a family of boxers, of pugilists.
Yes. Well, my grandfather was manager of the Scottish boxing team for like 40 years. And then my father after him, my uncles were all national champions. Me, myself, was junior national champion. My brothers were not. So, yeah, we are from a boxing. The only one that didn't fight was my mum. Yeah.
Oh, I bet you she fought in ways you didn't even understand at the time. And one thing I believe is true, the protagonist in the book came from Dundee, and so did you.
The protagonist, yes, that chappie in the book that does all those bad things. Yes, he came from Dundee.
So the book really is about a guy who, you would say, grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. And despite the best intentions, as I read it, caught a bad break, and it really ended up going from bad to worse, downhill. And what I found interesting about your book was that there wasn't a lot of, it is self-deprecating in a lot of ways. This is not Jeffrey Roberts from Shantaram, who is ends up as a hero in his own story. In one way, this is a book about a guy who makes a lot of wrong choices, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think he may be like a perfect example of a victim mentality. And I don't know if that comes across in this book. Maybe I have to write another one. But he's actually creating all these situations by himself, but he blames everyone else. And I think that kind of, whether he gets that lesson in the end, I don't think he does. But I don't think he's aware that it's actually his own fault. And this is the same with most people with the victim mentality, and lots of people have it. That we blame everyone else, and we're actually creating that matrix by ourselves. And we seek out situations to reconfirm that the world is a shit place and everybody's against me, you know.
Well, this is probably a good time to get you to read a little bit from the book.
Okay, I thought we'd do that at the end. All right. It was written in the vernacular, but then I had a big publisher from America that wanted to go global with it and recommended that I take out all the vernacular and write it in English. And then he decided he didn't want to publish it. So whether that's a good thing, but that is interesting. I mean, you know, Irvin Welsh, he was here a couple of years ago. He wrote Train Spotting. It was published in 30 different languages. Everybody loved it, and his was in vernacular. So yeah, that's a point of contention with me, whether I should or not. I mean, anyway, I didn't, so maybe I should have.
As a reader, he got it right, because there's always a balance between using that kind of vernacular that you go beyond what, you know, a normal reader could understand. As an Australian originally from Norway, I got it. It didn't go over my head or. So I thought that part is really well handled. You get the cultural background of the words, of the vernacular or the dialogue, without it sort of being overwhelming, if that
Yeah, I mean, the middle-class English newspapers hated it, Train Spotting. And they used to slag him off. And even though he had one of the best-selling books in the world, they said it was very badly received. And his answer was, if you didn't like my book, say you didn't like my book. But I've sold it in 30 different languages. And just because it's not about cricket and elephants, then, you know, which I thought was great, you know, it's true. Okay, so I'll read. Okay, a bit of context here. So the guy's had a hard life. He went to jail. His brother got killed. He's in the middle of all this shit. He's now working in London. He's a working class Scot. And the old saying, the only advantage of being Scottish in London is the police don't know you're black until you open your mouth. So he's coming home on the bus. He's had fight number 60. He's been boxing. And he's just a bit sick of it all because it's not going anywhere. So there we go. So he's on the bus and he says, there seemed to be a huge gaping hole inside of me. I wanted some answers, but didn't know where to look. I felt like there was a worldwide conspiracy afoot to keep me in a state of utter confusion, making me so anesthetized that I had no choice but to give up and let the experts get on with it. Too much coffee, I think. What a wonderful thing democracy is. You can say what you like as long as you do as you're told. Get a job, get a wife, pay your rent, pay your taxes, get a bank account, get a mortgage, have some kids, buy a car. Save up for a holiday, Christmas Day, match day, birthday, anniversary day. Remember, don't have a sick day or you won't get a payday. It all seems so superficial, so inadequate. Where did it all lead? Dying day, of course. Lying in some hospital bed in 30 years' time, dying of some disease of civilization, whilst up to my neck in debt and riddled in alcoholism, depression, loneliness, and insanity. There had to be more to life than this. The bus arrived at the Elephant and Castle shopping centre where I got off and walked up to Newington Butts to the Pullens estate. The squat was empty when I got there. The lads would more than likely be playing darts in the local pub. As usual, they'd be standing segregated from the rest of the English-speaking world in a little area they'd claimed for themselves and had aptly named it Scott's Corner. The squat was a fucking mess as usual. I fancied a cup of tea, but we were out of sugar. So I went next door to borrow some from my neighbour. His name was Jack, and he just came back from spending a year travelling around Asia. I was actually hoping to get a glimpse of his girlfriend, who was almost too beautiful for words. Cheekbones to die for and a really posh voice. Not that she ever spoke to the likes of us. She was out of our league. We just overheard her as she speaking to Jack on the stairs when she walked past, completely oblivious to us. She wasn't rude or anything. We were just insignificant and beneath her station. Her silences were deafening when she passed us on the stairs. We nicknamed her the Ice Maiden, and we were all too terrified to try and strike up a conversation. Social snobbery has been elevated to an instinct in England, and we, lowly porridge munchers, knew our grubby place. Jack invited me in and told me to sit down on the couch. He disappeared into the kitchen and emerged a few moments later with a couple of glasses of wine and a huge spliff in his gob. He retrieved some video copies of the old Kung Fu TV series and stuck one of them on the video player, setting it to play. Then he handed me the spliff and lounged back on the couch next to me. Have a go on that, mate. It's Ash from Nepal. It's the dog's bollocks. What empty ride, then? Boxing match. You fucking jocks are all the same. Fight, fight, fight. Why don't you get a fucking life, man? Look, mate, either I go training 3 nights a week or I sit in the pub every night, usually ending up in a fight anyway. You're different from those other jocks, then. Why don't you do something different, like go to college or travel? You can't be a fucking navvy all your life. I nearly went to university, but I ended up in Borstal. So you're going to spend the rest of your fucking life pissed off with society because things didn't go your way? Well, I don't see how it can be otherwise. Pain is inevitable, buddy, but suffering's optional. Stop talking in riddles, mate. Look, Kane is about to kick the shit out of these cowboys. We turned our attention to the TV where 6 cowboys had surrounded Kane, Grasshopper, as he was called by the Buddhist monks. They looked dangerous, but Kane was calmly telling them that he didn't want to fight. His impassive attitude was pissing the cowboys off. Kane was not intimidated and remained serene, standing his ground. There's a flashback to the Shaolin Temple where the master is instructing the younger Grasshopper how to strike without emotion. Grasshopper, regain your mental focus and come back to the breath. Your breath is a source of stability and strength. Feel the air as it enters the nostrils. Follow it as it flows effortlessly through the lungs. Let go of confusion and knowing will arise. Let go of fear and calm will arise. You can beat 1,000 of your enemies, but first you must beat yourself. Ground yourself, grasshopper. The cowboys are continuing to taunt Cain, trying to get him to retaliate, but he restrains himself. Please, I don't want any trouble. Just allow me to pass. The cowboys are now well pissed off and drunk, and their intentions apparent on their faces. They want to hurt him and hurt him bad. Hate for this man has taken hold of their senses. How dare he try and thwart their anger? Cain's prolonged composure and restraint has convinced them that he's a coward and a pushover. Still, Cain does not succumb to their anger, his only actions being to stand completely still on one leg in the heron stance. The cowboys are no longer putting up with this unusual display and Cain's lack of interest of them, so they attack. Within seconds, it's all over. Okay. So Jack and I clapped loudly from our front row seat, the couch. The wine and the spliff were really kicking in, and Jack shoved on another episode. That could be you, Dan. You could be Cain. How do you mean? Well, you can fight like him, right? And you want to break free from the shackles of your environment, right? So why don't you come like the wandering ascetic monk and go in search of the way? The way? Yeah, the way, the Tao, the rhythm of life, the circle of communication, the driving power in all nature, the ordering principle behind all life, the way of the warrior. What the fuck are you on about, Jack? I'm talking about you, Den, and who you think you are. An angry young man with a chip on his shoulder. The boastful boy, the big hard man that hates the world. Your name, your religion, your country, your language, your whole belief system is second-hand, and they're all given to you. These things were not your choice, and they aren't you. It all came from somewhere else, not from inside you. This is your conditioning, separating you from who you really are. If you go through life in the hard done-by mode, you will be close to all the good stuff out there. Try and experience the harmony, man, the interrelatedness. Bond with people, bond with nature, and above all, bond with yourself. The reason you're angry is because of the circumstances into which you were born. You didn't choose these circumstances, so don't allow these circumstances to determine the rest of your life. Everything is in a constant state of flux. Everything changes. Who are you really then, underneath this jaggy veneer? Who are you once you peel off all these labels that society has pinned on you? All that shit that blocks the light of your natural wisdom. Play your part in the comedy then, but stop identifying with the role. Happiness will come through disposition, not circumstance. You're losing me here, Jack. Exactly, Dan. Lose yourself. Strike down with the sword of wisdom the ignorance that lies within. And arise, great warrior, arise. You have to understand that you are not in order to understand that you are. Repeat the mantra, not me, not mine. Kill your ego. Reincarnate yourself right now. Pack your bags and go to the station and leave yourself behind. Change is natural. It's the way of the universe. It was the last thing the Buddha said on his deathbed. All compound things decay. Work out your own destiny with diligence. In other words, stop clinging to things that have no substance. Be flexible and go with the flow. A plant that is soft and pliable will bend in the wind, but a plant that is stiff and brittle will break off and die. Well, if the Buddha was so smart, why was he so fat then? That's not the original Buddha. The fat Buddha represents plenty, and he doesn't arrive for another couple of thousand years. The real Buddha, Gautama, lived as a hermit before he became enlightened. Some teachings say that he ate and used nothing but hemp seeds for 6 years, leading to his enlightenment. You sure he was enlightened? Maybe he was just stoned out of his nut. Confucius, he say, man who smoke joint in toilet high on pot, or a man fiddling under wheelbarrow, not always mechanic. You smoke too much, Jack. I'm being serious here, man. I'm talking about liberation. Freedom from the bondage of self. Freedom from a blinkered, prejudiced, opinionated thoughts. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. Oh, and how do I go about achieving this so-called freedom? Well, you can start by getting away as far as possible from those pathetic jock wankers you hang about with. Why don't you just jump on a plane and go to Asia? I'm going straight back there as soon as I finish this fucking poxy degree. And what am I going to do when I get there? Blow that bridge when you come to it, man. Go to Hong Kong. I've seen return tickets for $200. That's a week's money for you. What the fuck have you got to lose? The more stoned I got, the more abstract yet meaningful it all became. We were one and the same. I was he was me. That baldy little Chinese monk on TV was beckoning me to follow the path, the way of the warrior, the way of the grasshopper. The monk was right. Change was the natural way of the universe. Things were not always as they appeared to be. We talked, drank, smoked some more, and the more out of it I got, the better it sounded. Jack was right. Go away and leave myself behind. What the fuck did I have to lose? It was high time I cashed in my chips.
As I said in the introduction, Dennis is also a bit of an actor, as you can tell, and maybe this is a book that should be listened to.
Yeah, I've already done the audio book. Yes, so I've already recorded it. But there's a strange thing with Amazon. It has to be exactly the same as the written book, and I'm doing some updates to the written book, so therefore I can't post the. But it's about 30 hours long. It's a long one, you know. Yeah. But yeah, so I've done it. It's already recorded and paid for. I just have to finish the updates on this.
Right. So that is sort of about halfway through the book, and I know why you chose that, because it is a watershed for our protagonist. But one of the things that I found fascinating, sort of from that, so he's born in Dundee. He goes to Liverpool, makes some silly mistakes, or actually not so much his mistakes, ends up in Barstow jail, becomes hardened, goes back to Dundee, makes some other bad choices, back down in London, which is where we are here, and then he decides to travel the world, or to travel to Asia, and keeps on repeating the same mistakes, doesn't he? Yes. And that's sort of when I used a sort of comparison with Shantaram, it's real. Because this is partly, I mean, a lot of it is about addiction, not just addiction to bad choices, but addiction to drugs. And the two of them kind of intermingle quite a bit. And to me, it is also about the universality of that world, of people on the skids, drug addiction. It doesn't matter where you are, it's shit everywhere. So when you wrote that journey, tell us a bit more about that journey from when he sort of, in some ways, hit the bottom. His brother had just died. He wanted to get away from it all. He goes to Asia, and then he repeats it all again.
Yeah. Well, again, that's what, the book should be about someone with a victim mentality who repeats the same mistakes over and over again, ends up in the shit over and over again, and blames everyone else for it. And I think that's apparent with most of us when we make mistakes, or we keep repeating the same mistakes again, ending up in the same situation. If we can start to realize that it's us that are creating it, and then maybe we can stop doing it. So with this book, and my evolution as a human being has taught me that I'm responsible for what happens. But like in that passage where he describes, you're like all those other jokes, you're always fighting, you're always, that his belief system about himself will keep that. So he had to create, or all of us, we have to create a space and get rid of all that baggage that keeps us repeating the same problems or the same mistakes over and over again. So, yeah, I think it's a lesson we all have to learn, yeah.
There is a sliver of hope at the end, isn't it? But only a sliver.
Is there? I'm not sure. I mean, I wrote it. I don't know what people who are reading it thought, but I'm not sure whether he got it yet. I mean, it's quite apparent that he will continue in the same, but I don't know if there's hope at the end. I can't. Did you read hope into it? Yeah. Did you? You were on his side.
I wanted to read hope into it.
Well, hopefully. I mean, there's hope for me. There's hope for all of us. So if there's hope for him, then maybe he'll get a bit. I think again, the message of the book is to realize that, we are creating our own realities. And it's not other people that are, we always blame everything on everyone else. So I think that's the main message of the book, but yeah.
Did you set out to write it with a message, or did you set out
Not
to write a story?
at all, no. I just, I always fancied writing something, and I thought I'm going to try and write a book. So I wrote like 3 pages and thought, oh, well, that's not a book yet. So, but I always fancied myself as being clever and witty and able to write funny stuff. But that's not a book. So it took a long time. I think if anybody else is trying to write a book, I think what was very helpful for me, somebody gave me a book called The Artist's Way, which was written by Martin Scorsese's wife, I think. And one of the exercises is the morning pages, 3 pages of whatever, and then chuck it afterwards. It makes a lot of sense. If you're going to play football, you'll kick a ball. If you're going to box, you'll punch a bag. And if you're going to write, then, these days.
So is there another book in it?
I don't know if it's the same character. There's definitely more I want to write about. I'd love to make him into a Flashman type character and just put him in all kinds of situations. But, or I'll write a book about something else. I don't know. But I do want to write more. But I'm not sure whether I'm going to leave it there or start on a different one. I don't know.
Talk to us a bit more about what you're alluding to in terms of healing, redemption, realizing the error of your ways, realizing the choice. And we all make bad choices along the way. Some are just more life-changing than others. But in your very colorful and varied life as a traveler, boxer, comedian, actor, bodyguard, I'm sure you made some wrong choices along the way, but what's been your own experience, and what is your experience now? As I understand, you're going into joining me in your 7th decade. So what's your experience of healing and redemption?
I think I explained, I did Vipassana, and I did about 40 of them, so it means I spent almost a year in silence. So I was a bit of a hopeless case. I wasn't doing it because I was a holy man. I was either, locked away in a monastery or getting into terrible trouble somewhere else. So I look, and also living in Bali is a good thing because this kind of attracts, alternative healers, and has attracted a certain type of people are open to it more here. So having lived in Bali and experiencing a lot of different, even martial arts or so, and then I in the book I mentioned NLP, so I studied a bit of that before as well. But I found everything a bit long-winded, and I found another new discipline which I'm now practicing, which is called Psyche, which kind of cuts to the chase. So instead of having to evaluate what is wrong with someone or spend hours in psychotherapy or whatever, this I found is the quickest, most direct way to get some kind of clarity in your life. So this is, I've set up a company now here in Bali, and I'm not sure where it's going to go, but I just find for myself at least it's the most effective mindset change technique that I've come across so far. It's a bit like Bruce Lipton. You've heard of Bruce Lipton. He talks about the epigenetics, how our thoughts then influence our health. So yeah, he's a big proponent of this Psyche stuff. He practices that as well. So I find that it's not long-winded, it's not time-consuming. It's a very quick way of changing, aligning your wants with your beliefs.
Well, after 40 bouts of Vipassana, I'm sure we're looking for some quicker solutions. Was that part of it?
Well, that was just all part of the journey, and it was fun and enjoyable, and I learned a lot. But, sitting in one position for 10 hours a day and having a plate of rice, and it can get a bit, I met some interesting people doing it, though.
You're not supposed to, though, are you?
No, I mean, no, there was the lady who spent 7 years in a cave in Tibet, 7 years in the snow, Tenzing Palmo. I met her. She came on a course and gave us a discourse. That was interesting, you know. Yeah, and she was interesting. And then there was Uma Thurman's father, Robert Thurman. Is that his name? He was here. He was the first white guy to become a Buddhist monk and ran away to Tibet. And I think that's why she has this lucid thing about her, because her father's this, he's one of the, they said he's one of the most important people in the world, or one of the intellectual, you know. He has one glass eye, so when he tells you to meditate, he goes, right, okay, let's meditate. And he's still staring at you. No, but on that journey, and I read a lot, and you know, Buddhist philosophy, and looked into the human condition, and I've just found that this new discipline is a quick shortcut and a cut to the chase of finding out, you know, what's going on inside you. Yeah, yeah, it's not long-winded. It's not. You know.
And so there is hope in that too.
Well, it's definitely hope for me, because it made a huge change in me, and also I've been practicing with a few friends around me, and like you said yourself, you want to become a wizard, yeah? You said that on your profile. He said he wants to be a wizard after becoming a writer.
And a musician, and then a wizard.
Yeah. No, but I mean, Osho, for example, explained that NLP is a way that the Western mind can understand Eastern techniques, and you know, the subconscious mind doesn't think in words, so we have to somehow distract the conscious mind so that we can get in and make those changes. Now, traditionally, that would be done with something like hypnotherapy or music or whatever. But this new discipline doesn't involve distracting the conscious mind. It works in unison with the conscious mind. So,
you mentioned, I think you used the word spiritual cultivation.
I did.
Can you expand on that?
Spiritual cultivation. Well, I mean, I suppose it's growing as a human being. And all of us need to let go of who we think we are and make space to become who we were supposed to be. So, you know, we create, we always, well, I do at least, I always blamed everything else for the situations I got into. And actually, I created them because of who I thought I was. My psyche and my, you know, my personality, my ego all came from my experiences. But we are not what happened to us. We are what we become. So I have to let go of everything that I created and then create that. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But if I'm so caught up in being the person I thought I was, like it says in the book, you know, the Scottish hard man that went to jail, or whatever, or the drug addict, or whatever, however you see yourself or whatever's happened to you. But that's not me. I have to let those experiences go and be in the moment and try, and then you open up to create. And the world's a wonderful place, and there's lots of creating to be done. So if we can let go of baggage, emotional baggage, go to the station and leave yourself behind, then, you know, that's the way forward, I think. Yeah. And Den, or Dennis, the protagonist, not you. That bloke. Yeah. That book, yeah. He does that a lot. He's kind of on the run all the time, isn't he? Yeah. And that's, I mean, I guess you could read into that. He's on the run from himself. But he kind of, every time he runs, he runs back into himself, doesn't he? He kind of runs into exactly the same situations, whether he's in Thailand or Hong Kong or Japan. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm glad you see that in it, because I suppose that is the story of, you know, you will keep banging your head up again. It's like a wasp trying to get out a glass window, keeps hitting itself up, you know. We keep repeating it, and that's why hopefully with this evolution as a human being, you can see that and release yourself from that mental prison that I create, you know. So yes, he keeps repeating the same stuff because subconsciously he believes that the world is a very violent, angry place, and he's always going to end up in the shit, you know. And most of our subconscious memories are implanted in us by the age of 7. And that's why that famous Jesuit expression is, give me the boy until he's 7 and I'll give you back the man. So, you know, the thing is, as we, you know, so really mentally we're all 7 years old. We're still acting like that guy that was told, no, you can't do that. That's wrong. You'll never be good at that. And we grow up with the same, you know, thinking as we had then. So the idea and the beauty of this new discipline that I do is that changes it, like, immediately, you know. So we get rid of these cobwebs and these old belief systems about ourselves and allow a bit of room for something more creative.
It sounds a bit like magic sauce without the after effects.
Well, I mean, I think these kind of disciplines go back thousands of years. You know, it's nothing new about it, but it's just put into a context where we can understand it. But I think shamanic healing and witch doctors and everybody else, they use the senses, they use music, they use plants, they used things to open up. You know, you didn't just go and get a pill of someone. So I think NLP, Psyche, all these other, you know, the biology of belief, epigenetics, there's nothing new. I think we always survived as a human race using things to inspire our creativity or inspire, you know, release of bad memories or traumatic situations. But it's just put in a context where we can understand it, you know.
This is probably a good time to see if anyone's got any questions in the audience. Jax?
Psyche. Okay, well, I went and did a course, and immediately, okay, there was a course, there was about quite a few people there. I found it just within 40 Vipassanas later, and I was still a madman, you know? And I knew why I was mad, and I knew exactly what was wrong with me, but I couldn't get rid of it. So it was good, at least I narrowed it down to a couple of experiences that I couldn't let go. So I went along to this course, and within a few minutes, these tremendously traumatic experiences no longer had any effect over me. And so I saw the massive change in me immediately, and I was blown away. So, you know, I've become a facilitator, and I've did it with other people. So it really is, for me, the quickest and easiest way. And it's not about me telling somebody and someone making an evaluation about what's wrong with me, because I don't really believe in that, you know. So it's kind of a couple of, it combines NLP, creative thinking, positive whatever. It combines them all together into one quick, definite technique that just suddenly shifts ways of thinking that have been stuck there for years. So it's incredible. Yeah, it's very effective. Well, the outcome is that I don't really have all that baggage around. It's changed me. I'm a different person since I did that. Yeah, I'm much happier, much more relaxed, much easier to be around, and yeah, and I knew the two. I mean, I felt the effect immediately. You know,
and he doesn't punch people as often anymore.
I don't get punched as often anymore.
Anyone else?
Yes.
I sense some ambivalence in that exchange with Jack. Jack's kind of giving the very general, go to Asia, you know. And even he, I think, doesn't quite know what to do once you're there, right? I mean, and so I just wonder if, I mean, here you are in Ubud. It's everything from high colonics to, I hate to say it, but like the psychic tofu foot massage kind of joke. And do you still harbor that? Yeah, do you harbor ambivalence for what's going on out there, I guess?
Well, you know, I think we're lucky to be here, and I think we're lucky. Like, I've been in Bali for nearly 34 years now, and I've always met people I thought were a bit crazy, a bit, you know, healing, spiritual, and because I was younger then. But now that I'm older, I see those people are actually talking a lot of sense. And I know there's a lot of weirdos around, but, you know, there's like in any field. So there's some good at it and some, I mean, what's it called? Psychic dancing? What's it when they go? Ecstatic dancing, for example. You know, like, that's what young people do, or I see them doing it, and it's probably a really good thing. It's not for me. I couldn't see me at 60 jumping around in my Speedos and ecstatic dancing. But, or maybe I could. Maybe I should give it a go. But no, so I think we're lucky to be in Bali, and we're lucky to be exposed, because that wouldn't happen in South London or Dundee or something, you know. So, and again, you have to pick and choose between them. But I think this is a wonderful place, and it attracts that kind of thing. And whether you're ready to accept it or understand it, or whether you think they're all, you know, I was going to say bearded twats, but I won't. Sanjay. No, but, you know, whether you think they're all Changu, whatever. Did I say Changu? Whether you've got a man bun and tattoos. So, no, I think we're lucky to be here, and, yeah, we just choose between them.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, but I'm also curious. Sorry to dominate, but does this mean? Oh, yeah. So Jack, is he? I mean, not Jack. You're Dennis.
Dennis, I'm Dennis.
Is he sort of an example of someone who is never going to get to point zero? Like, he'll never be helped?
Well, you read it. What do you think? I mean, I wrote it. It's hard for me to say where it's going.
Well, I guess that comes back to the sliver of hope at the end. That you know, he does. I mean, it's the second, probably more poignant, or the more poignant passages in the book when he does spend time with the monks in Thailand, isn't it? Yeah. And he does get some lessons, and he starts to see himself, but then he still drowns when he comes out. But that's where I kind of felt, oh, there might still be hope in that, because and if you talk about addiction, and I have one of my oldest stepdaughters struggled with addiction for decades, and you go in and out. You think you've reached the absolute depth, and then you have to reach another depth before you actually come out of it. And that's kind of where I saw the hope with our protagonist, that eventually he will come out of it. What I actually liked about the book in that sense is that, you know, it's not American. It doesn't have to have a happy ending. It doesn't have to, you don't have to, in my mind, you don't actually have to tie up all the loose ends, because life isn't like that. You know, none of us reach complete redemption, or you know, reach complete happiness, or any of those things. There's always some static and some disturbances around there. But it's about, it sounds a bit trite, that it is about the journey. And I think that's again, that's where I saw hope, that this guy is all redemption, all healing comes first and last from recognition, doesn't it?
I mean, and again, that's a new ending on the book. The last book, I left him in jail, but the new publisher said, well, can you bring him out? So I thought I'd put him back in the box. And then he came back again, much worse than he was before. So the publisher said, write about jail. People love jail. So I wrote about jail. And then put an ending and bring him back. You can't just leave him there forever. So he's back, you know.
As a protagonist, and personally in your life, was that always that seeking for the soul to be better than you were living? Was that always that search for a better life, or for a better purpose, or a better outcome?
Well, I think, I mean, originally it's an economic thing where you start off realizing that if you stay working in the supermarket in Scotland, you're going to earn £16 a week, you know, and then So I think it starts off like just trying to better yourself financially, and then traveling, and then, yeah, I'm not sure at what age, but I think when you're young, you don't really care, right? People just go around, and I suppose that they call it a bottom, when people end up, yeah, broke, skint, addicted, in jail, friendless, homeless, and then they start to think, you know, maybe I'm not doing this properly. So, yeah, I suppose I've been through all of those things. And at some point you start to look inwards and think, why am I making such a mess of things? But I'd never found a technique to get rid of it as quickly as this one that I'm doing now. You know, like I said, I did Vipassana, I did different ecstatic dancing, or whatever, the yoga, meditation, lots of different ones. But yeah, they all tell you why you're like that, but they don't tell you what to do about it. And that's the difference. And that's what I love about doing Psyche. It actually tells you how to fix it. It doesn't tell you why you're like that, or a Buddhist philosophy, or the Mahabharata, or, you know, the wisdom of it. Doesn't tell you any of that. It just says, okay, you feel like this, change it. And that's what I appreciate and love about this new discipline that I'm doing. Yeah. Was it the yearning, or was it the beatings? You know, this is the thing. I mean, was it defiance? Was it the fact that you just couldn't take any more beatings, so you come back and fight, rather than a yearning? I think you're making it a bit more spiritual than what it actually is. If physically somebody gets that many beatings growing up, and that many confrontations with the law, and that many, then it's more of a physical thing in the beginning, and then maybe that leads on to something else. But I don't know if you could really...
If you have that many beatings, sometimes you just curl up and die. But there's something that kept you going.
Yeah.
Seeking.
Yes, but what is that? But I don't know if it was a yearning for spirituality. I think it was a yearning not to be beaten.
Or to be, just have a better life than what you were having.
Yes.
Which is spiritual.
Which starts off, and then the
Starts
spiritual, but I think you reach a certain age, after 35, 40, then you start to look at why, when, who am I, why am I here?
Yeah.
But up until then, you sort of, you know, most people don't really care. I didn't.
Gets to 40.
Do we have any questions from the online audience? No?
Nobody's watching.
Do we have an online audience?
Hello, world.
Hello, world. Well, before we finish up, you want to read a bit more for us?
No, I didn't really pick another bit.
Pick another bit.
Oh, God. Okay.
Is there sex in it?
Not really,
Kind
no.
of. Oh, well, I mean, there's a proliferation of the species. Okay. I kind of like this bit. It's called, is it England is a Bitch?
I remember going to a Ken Follett, who was one of my favorite authors, book launch a few years ago, and someone asked him, do you ever read your books again? And he said, no. Once I've launched, I never ever read it again. And I think a lot of authors do that. When I published my book, I didn't read it for 2 years, and then after 2 years I read it again. I thought, oh my God, I could have done so much better, but that's kind of part of the process.
Yeah. I feel the same way. Okay, I'll read a bit. How long we got? This bit's called Up Your Kilt. Now, just a bit of a background on this. I just woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning once, and this wrote itself. It doesn't seem like the rest of the writing, so it kind of, I don't know. Anyway. Now that I was earning a crust from my illegal activities, selling drugs, I decided to pursue the activity that I'd missed most during my unlawful incarceration. Sexual habits differ from culture to culture, and perhaps the Scottish mating game needs further explanation. Scottish women in general seem to be receptive to the caveman approach. The male members of this macho society, where men are men and sheep wear wellies, truly appreciate beauty. In fact, we even have a special name for beautiful women in Scotland. We call them tourists. Scotland's unofficial national anthem is Hey MacLeod, Get Off of My You. And the new Scottish Barbie doll comes with 12 kids, a doll check and a drinking problem. The Scottish Mafia are so poor they do drive-by shootings from the bus. If you ever needed concrete proof of Darwin's survival of the fattest theory, then look no further than the Scottish mating game, played out every Saturday in pubs, clubs, bars and discos, chip shops and bingo halls. On this holiest of holy days, the nation is absorbed by that opiate of the masses, football. Though the women folk are not directly involved in the conversations surrounding this pastime, their active cooperation is nevertheless essential to the smooth running of the day's events. Saturdays would typically start with the female members of the household rising bright and early to attend to domestic chores. The traditional tribal costume men wear for these occasions will be dusted, pressed, and in general made ready. The tribal costume is, however, not compulsory, as some men prefer to effect no decoration whatsoever. This allows them more freedom of movement behind enemy lines. The readying of the costume will differ from household to household, and the choice of how to present himself at the match is entirely at the discretion of the male. This, of course, can be a great cause of confusion amongst the gentler sex, who, through no fault of their own, cannot be expected to comprehend the intricate delicacies of a man's sartorial approach to match day. An ill-chosen scarf may, for instance, inspire great hostility from an opposing tribe and could result in the most unfortunate circumstance of preventing our protagonist from arriving home by his preferred mode of transport, which more often than not would be train or omnibus, and not by the means described in the threatening diatribe of a losing side, "You're going home in a fucking ambulance." Next, the breakfast, a heart attack on a plate, is made ready. This normally consists of lardy sausages, lardy eggs, lardy chips, and some more lard just for good measure. Only now the male homo sapien is gently prodded from his quiet dreams of nutmegs and injury-time clinchers, and he makes his way belching and farting towards the thunderbox for his morning ablutions. The shaving ritual may include the cranium, depending on the level of fierceness this particular specimen wishes to portray. Skinheads tend to look hard even if they're soft as shite. After being watered and fed, donning his costume, the male is almost ready for the off. Raking through his toolbox of knuckle dusters, clubs, machetes and flick knives, Fat Boy will choose his weapon. Again, the poor women folk, dreadfully undermined in this phallocentric, hetero-patriotic society, are at a loss in this matter and are often heard asking the daftest of questions. "Will I get your flick knife out of the cupboard for you, Willie?" "For Christ's sake, woman, it's the Rangers we're playing the day, no the bloody Boy Scouts. Now bring me the hatchet, the green and white one with the Pope's face painted on the handle." I don't know if anybody understands any of that. Sandwiches and Bovril in hand, Fat Boy sallies forth whistling some catchy sectarian ditty, the lyrics of which will pertain to either some Knoxian notion of a hand-me-down sash for the doubters of papal inflammability, light a match and see, or a merry ploughboy who leaves behind a girl called Mary for the left-footers. Now that the women have been left to their own devices, they begin to plan the days of activities, most which will centre on beautifying themselves for the evening's festivities, when the men folk return home from the day's sporting event and the real games begin. All day until the evening, the women folk will primp and pluck the nose, lash and lush, pluck and brush, crimp and curl, knots unfurl, paint the toes, powder the nose. Doused with hairspray and perfume, these feisty females footer forwards in fuck-me footwear for a fun-filled evening. If the male's team is playing at home, it would be customary to nip home for a shit shower and shave before going out on the pool. If, on the other hand, it is an away game, there won't be time for this, so he will more than likely go straight out dressed in full tribal costume, fanning the flames of sectarian strife. This could result in the unfortunate likelihood of having his legs broken, rather than the original plan was to get his leg over. Sing a sectarian song and end up in theatre, the operating theatre. The intermingling of the sexes doesn't really begin until later in the disco. So during the early stages of the evening in the pub, the genders remain split. Small clusters of men gather together and noisily reminisce about miss-sitters, four-eyed referees and biased officials. The women folk will discreetly place themselves within spitting distance of whatever male they fancy and bat their eyelids patiently until Don Juan is pissed enough to give some sign that indicates he might be interested in getting together later. This confirmation of interest will normally be a wink or a half smile, but in the case of a real smoothie, the interest might even stretch to a verbal foray. Are you going to the disco later, Morag? Aye, well, I might see you in there. To the untrained ear, this might sound like an offhand remark, but in making this statement, Romeo has now thrown his cards on the table. He's let it known to Morag that if she plays her cards right, she might end up as this evening's object of desire. It is a brave move on his part. These kinds of words must be uttered well out of earshot of his mates, as Scottish men are not really big on cutting the carpet and usually leave the dancing to the girls while they prop up the bar trying to look hard. As the evening comes to a close at the disco, the DJ will traditionally play a few slow songs to indicate that it'll soon be chucking out time. At this signal, the plucky males will dash to the dance floor and tap a lassie on the shoulder, uttering the famous words, "Are you dancing?" Having ensconced the chosen female in a beery hug, Romeo will then inquire with uniform unoriginality, "Can I take you up the road?" This seemingly innocent question is actually a request for sex, and Dundee women are fully aware that an affirmative answer to this question is an invitation to amorous advances. It may not be an open invitation for fully penetrative sex, but it has to at least include the promise of a cup of tea and a carry-on. As the eager young couples hurry homewards through the dark and frosty night, and the city rests in quiet slumber, one cannot help but speculate that if there is a God in heaven, he can now sit back and relax in the comforting knowledge that the proliferation of the species is assured.
So that was a rather long-winded answer to your question, is there sex in the book? But with that, I would say a big thank you to Dennis for talking about your book and your journey of writing it. I've certainly enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading it, and here it is, out now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everybody for coming, and all the best. Thank you.
And thank you for supporting the Yayasan Mudraswari Saraswati Patrons Program, and to the festival's partner who made Ubud Writers and Readers Festival possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you everybody. All the best.